So every time the for each goes through, it's going to be having a different value. It's going to iterate through the array, pull each employee and apply this logic to that employee. Okay, so that is what happens with the for each. So this is where we are using objects and then we are using arrays together. So the for each is something you would have seen last week when you looked at the arrays, and this week the new concept is this JavaScript, where we are putting all different elements that are related into one object, and then we are using that object here. So let's step through this and see how this works. Okay, report BMI has to be triggered from somewhere, right? So let's trigger him from here. Report BMI does not take any input parameters, and it does not return any output also. Okay, fine. So let's refresh the page. So let's see. Oh yeah, I made the mistake here. So there is no equal to, there is only colon. That's what it's yelling about. Okay, so report BMI, it already calculated the BMI, but let's step through and see what happens here. Refresh the page if you want to go back. So I am defining this whole object, right? So if you hover over employees, you can see there is John, Mary, and Keith. There are 3 people. So the length of that array is going to be 3. Then when you come into this for each, you never looped it, but for each internally does a loop. Okay, this is the concept you have to remember. Because we are so lazy as programmers, we find shortcuts so that we can make it more easier for us. Instead of writing a loop and all that, this for each is going to do for each one. So I wouldn't say lazy, we are just trying to be more efficient. Okay, so every time it comes inside, the employee is going to have a different person. Okay, so we are still not there, so let's step in. Now what is the employee? The emp variable has John with a weight of 165 and height of 60. So when you say emp dot, that's how you access the properties. So BMI is new, but weight is there, height is there, height is there. So we multiply and save it to this BMI, emp BMI, and then we display the emp BMI. That's the first one. Now let's see the magic. Now who's the employee? It's Mary. We didn't write a loop, but it automatically happens. Okay. The third time, Keith is on the emp variable. So that is how you iterate. So we are looking at how to use the function here, an anonymous function. An anonymous function is a no name function. Okay. So we are using a no name function because there is really no name for this function and we don't care. Let's say that you want to use a function with a name, and you want to do something about it. So you want to do a report out for a reason. For example, you want to know like if that person is obese or overweight or whatever it is in that categories, right? So let's call it as the health status. You can do this inside that. You can write this logic in here, but I am just going to like do it as a separate function so I can show you how to call that function. Report health status, right? So if we want to report the health status, we want to know the BMI. If you give me the BMI, I'll give you the health status, okay? So that is kind of the agreement here. BMI is greater than 30, I think. Let us see the ranges. BMI ranges. Okay, so BMI is greater than 30 is obese. BMI is greater than 25, greater than or equal to 25, return overweight. Else if BMI is greater than or equal to 18.5, the person's healthy, otherwise the person's going to be underweight. So these are the return values. Okay, so I'm returning the health status. So I can just say here, let's do this. So what I did here is I wrote a function called report health status. It takes a parameter, a number basically. I'm just calling it BMI. See, I'm not doing a var BMI here because that would erase the value I'm getting. So that's a bad idea. So we are just checking to see if BMI is greater than 30, if BMI is greater than 25, BMI greater than 18 and all that. And then we are returning the status. So we are capturing that in health and we are writing the health as console log. So here is a function that is not an anonymous function that is being called from an anonymous function. This is an anonymous function and we are calling this function within this function. So that is possible. I'm just showing you one of the use cases that you can do it. Okay, so let's see. So we can put a breakpoint here for each person. It'll come in here and say first person is 32, which means he's obese. Second person 32, 32, 31. They're all obese. Okay, we have to change the weight or height or something. So always make sure that you're like testing a variety of values for your test case to make sure that you're getting at least one in each category. So this person's height, maybe we can increase 70. Let's see if that tips the scale basically. Okay, this person is, okay, so we got 2 healthy and 1 obese. So I mean, you can add like different data and just make sure that you get one return value for each of the 4 outputs. So here is where you're calling a regular function is being called from an anonymous function. Okay, so that is what happened here. You can push this whole thing inside this guy also if you want. That is okay too. So the idea is that you're passing a value. This is the parameter you're sending and that will get saved in this BMI. So that's the whole idea. One other thing I want to talk about is scope. So let's talk about scope. Scope is like related to a variable. So there is a function level scope, which would be a local scope. And then there is a entire file level scope, which is going to be the global scope. Okay. You define final price will be accessible in all the functions. This final price will be accessible in every single function. But for example, the BMI that we defined, employee will not be accessible to any other function. It will be only accessible to this particular function. It is local. Okay. So health status has BMI, right? So the BMI is only known to this particular guy. This guy doesn't know what BMI is. So let's just play around with that concept and like try a little function. So this guy is going to like check for the global versus local scope. Any variable I put outside of a function. So let's try to print him here.